It's really, really exciting to be back in London again. In fact, I was having a conversation with a few folks that are here, and there was sort of a discussion happening about how to get here the most efficient way from the airport. So just a show of hands, who actually made it here from Heathrow? Okay, I see a few people here. And raise your hands if you use the Heathrow Express. I can see the people that are experts and clearly have the skill of figuring out how to get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. Because I think if you took an Uber, the answer was about 2 hours. And if you took the Heathrow Express, it was about 15 minutes. And apparently there was a controversy over, was there a strike, was there not a strike? Did it impact the trains that move underground versus the trains that move above ground? I think the answer was that they didn't impact the Heathrow Express. So anyway, the reason that I bring this up as a story is I'm going to get back to sort of Uber in just a minute. But one of the things that every company that we've been talking to at Eightfold has been mentioning over and over again is this idea of trying to become a skills-based organization, right? And many of you are having this conversation not just amongst the HR organization, but this is a boardroom conversation right now across our customer base. Everyone is being asked by their boards, the CEOs, how do you become a skills-based organization? So I actually want to start with a little bit of a story. This is a sort of a personal story from my past, which is going to talk about sort of the why. Why is it important to actually become a skills-based organization? So I'm going to transport you back to a time. This is 2020, February of 2020. I actually happened to work for the world's largest rideshare network at the time, Uber. The same product that it takes 2 hours to get to here from Heathrow. And there was a very interesting thing that was happening at that time at the company, which was that in California, the governor had just issued a state of emergency. It was basically an event that had never happened before, right? Which is an edict came down from the governor saying you couldn't go into the office anymore. The state was shutting down. Effectively, all services were being shut down. Obviously, at the time, I worked for a company whose entire business was predicated on moving people from point A to point B. And overnight, basically, that business started to get impacted. You had a situation where people were no longer moving around, and pretty much every state in the US in the next few days started to follow that same pattern. And that was followed by the rest of the world, definitely including the UK. And what happened as a result of this is that there was a massive panic that set into Uber. The company had to make incredibly rapid decisions on sort of how to navigate a world in which more than 90% of its bookings evaporated basically overnight at the time. And obviously, the company had to decide what to do with its people, right? There were tens of thousands of people that worked at this business, and they had to figure out how to navigate this change. And what happened as a result is, you can look it up in the press, but thousands of people were let go as a result of this. Now, while this was happening, very interestingly, right, the same people that were no longer moving from point A to point B across the world started to get on their phones and start to press buttons and effectively request food delivery to their homes. So the complete pattern changed, right? And this happened overnight. So what was under 20% of Uber's revenue up to that point suddenly ended up becoming 80% of its revenue effectively overnight. And the skills that were necessary to operate this business, the Uber Eats business, were somewhat surprisingly the same types of skills from the people that had been let go. So about a month and a half later, many of these people were invited back into the workforce. This was a time where becoming a skills-based organization and understanding what is the capability of your people so that you can redeploy them to the right jobs would have been incredibly valuable for this business. And that is kind of, if you try to answer the why, every one of your businesses went through this transformation over the last few years, maybe at a different pace than Uber, but very, very similar. You needed to figure out how to navigate people to the right roles in the organization. So that's a simple story which tries to illustrate why it's important to actually become a skills-based organization. Now, what I described at Uber is not the only challenge facing businesses like yours, right? you also have this massive set of changes that is impacting pretty much every part of the organization. You may have had historical top performers whose jobs have fundamentally changed over the course of the last few years. And now they're no longer top performers, and you have to now figure out how to navigate these people within the organization. I described this part of companies laying off in one part of the organization and hiring in another part of the organization. That example might actually resonate quite a bit with many of the companies that are here today. We've also had to grapple with this whole idea of hybrid work, trying to bring people back into the workforce, when many of them may have actually moved away from their home office locations. And while all of this is going on, it's also this secular shift towards D&I that we have also been seeing in the workforce. So when you look at HR organizations today, you have to navigate all of these different challenges. So in addition to this, what we at Eightfold truly believe is that the key to unlocking the solutions to many of these challenges comes from knowing what people's skills are. So if I go back to the Uber example that I just described briefly, one of the really interesting things about this was to staff Uber Eats as a business, one of the most common roles that Uber needed was that of a sales development representative. A key aspect of trying to navigate the change that was happening was effectively reaching out to restaurants and trying to get them onto the platform. And it just so happened that the types of people that could do this job included customer service representatives, right, who had previously been let go at the company. If you had this deep understanding of the skill sets of these people, knowing that they had customer interfacing skills that could have easily been redeployed, the entire upheaval that happened at the company could have been completely avoided. And that is what we at Eightfold truly believe, that if you start to understand people at the level of skills, you can make transformation happen in a way that is much more in tune with all of the shifts that have been happening around us. If you look at organizations, the way that they're constructed today, despite all of the sort of friction that exists, people learn how to work together by utilizing the skills that they possess. Right? They have skills that are being used together to effectively create work product and create outcomes for companies. But if you ask most companies today, they think of their employees as effectively cogs in a machine. And they are organized in these hierarchical roles and departments. And this is a major challenge, right? Because whenever a shift comes about, it's actually very, very difficult to redeploy people if you look at them in this particular fashion. As was mentioned a bit earlier today, we at Eightfold truly believe this, right? That you actually know more about an employee on day 0 than on day 365. And the origin of this is actually very simple, right? If you look at talent acquisition, that's been a place within the HR portfolio where a lot of innovation has happened over the last few years. When people are being hired at most companies, including the companies that are represented in the room here today, you are evaluating their skills. You're evaluating, are they capable of fitting into the organization and what part of the organization they should fit into when it comes to the hierarchy that you have within your job families. And so there's a lot of evaluation that happens on people when it comes to their skills, what are they capable of doing, and then they enter the workforce, and sometimes what ends up happening is that you deploy them on something that is completely different than what they were hired to do in the first place. By the time you get to day 365, you have now lost track of their previous background. You have lost track to a certain extent about the new skills that they've gained over the last year. And you get to a place where when the next emergency hits, when the next major secular shift in the industry hits, you are less prepared to redeploy them to the right problem. And I think that is something that we fundamentally at Eightfold believe needs to change. So the question is, how can we solve this problem? How can we enable all of your businesses to be much more resilient to the kinds of shifts that we are seeing? Ashu talked a little bit earlier today about sort of all the shifts that are happening in the AI space and the pace of innovation and how it's accelerating. So this problem is only going to be compounded. It is not one that is going to get any simpler from here on out. So we've been thinking at Eightfold, how can we go about and help you navigate some of these changes that are coming? So if you think about over the last 7 years that we have been around as a company, what have we been actually working on, right? Fundamentally, the problem started out with using AI in HR in a way that was unprecedented. We built out this very deep understanding of people's skill sets, helping you inventory the skills that you have today within your organization, helping you understand the skills at a level of depth that has never been possible before. On top of this, in the last couple of years, we launched the Jobs Intelligence Engine, which is the ability to combine these skills and basically layer on top of it what are the roles that effectively utilize the different skills in the organization, and what are the proficiencies that people need to operate at to basically be proficient and good at what they do on an everyday basis. That is the foundation of our talent intelligence platform. This is a platform that today serves all of these different use cases on top of the platform, all the way from career pathing for your employees to hiring for your recruiters, and a number of other problems in between. We are now expanding that platform into the next iteration, which is about helping you now navigate the sorts of changes that I just mentioned. So, and specifically, it is about navigating changes using skills as the currency. So let me show you a bit of a roadmap on how we're going to enable you to make it possible to navigate change in the future. The first thing that we're going to enable you to do is to understand your market through talent insights in a way that has never been possible before, to understand the shift that is happening when it comes to the skills required to be successful. And we're going to enable this through the understanding of role evolution through our Jobs Intelligence Engine. So for example, when changes are happening to specific roles, what are the skills that are growing? What are the skills that are declining? And how can you navigate this by planning for the future when it comes to a specific role at the company? It's not enough to just know what these changes are, but you also have to plan for the future of the organization. And in talking to many of our customers, what we have learned is that they still use Excel and Google Sheets to do some of this planning today. We think that there is a better way, and I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes. And the last part of this is that once you actually have a plan in place, right, in terms of how to navigate to the future of the organization, it is about executing that change throughout the organization in a way that makes sense. And we believe that we at Eightfold have unlocked the first phase of that solution. So before I show you the solution, I'm actually going to go to a real example, that of a Python programmer. And in this case, I'm actually going to use myself as the example. So if some of you that know me know that I started out my career as a software engineer in Silicon Valley, and this was back in 2004. What you're seeing on the screen is an example of a program that I wrote back then, right? And I worked for a company that shipped product every 6 months. When the deadlines were approaching to get the product out on time, we pulled all-nighters. We basically did whatever was necessary to get the product out. Fast forward to 2023, I did lose the facial hair, but I did gain some tools that were not available back then, and that includes generative AI capabilities where the same sort of programs that I was writing using Python can now be automated and effectively be written using generative AI technology. Effectively, this translates what would take several days, if not several weeks of work, into just a few seconds with effectively the ability to write the right, effectively code through generative AI. So if this doesn't convince you that the skills necessary to be successful have dramatically changed today, then effectively you need to do a little bit more reading about all of the changes that are about to happen across every single role at your companies and every single role across all of the industries that make up this room. So today, we are announcing the availability of our skills-based talent planning solution. This is going to revolutionize and change the way that you look at your talent, and is going to enable you to shift your company towards the types of changes necessary to effectively be ahead of all of the changes that are around all of us today. So let me describe how this is going to work. So let's take that example again of a software engineer, right? So with all of the tools that are available out there, the skills required to be successful as a software engineer are dramatically shifting. So the first part of the solution here is to introduce our talent insights capability. And what this does is it basically takes an inventory of all of the skills necessary to be successful in this particular role, layers on top of it the market trends, but now what we're able to do is to actually include trends like generative AI in the mix. So if I pick generative AI as a particular trend, what you can see is that the system automatically tells you what skills are likely to be impacted the most, the least, and what are new skills that are emerging as a result of this. And you can start to understand the impact that trends like this are going to make to a specific role at your company. When you hit the compare option, you can start to see the difference between the present and the future that is being predicted by the AI in terms of skills that will be impacted. And effectively, this gives you a much more deeper understanding of how do you navigate the changes that are happening across every role within the organization. Once you start to understand what changes are coming, you can start to get to the next phase, which is to actually plan for this change within the organization. And here what you're seeing on the screen is our planning tool that effectively will allow you to now take that software engineering plan that we have created for the future and start to apply it to your organization. I can click here and pick the software engineering job family. It'll automatically start to pull in all of the roles that make up this software engineering job family. And as you can see, there's a number of things that we can now do with the software engineering function. We can decide if you want to grow it or if you want to future-proof the organization. In this case, we're going to future-proof the organization. And what we're able to do here is to pull in all of the roles that make up this job family. You can pick Software Engineer 1, which is where we started. Remember, we did effectively the trending of what skills are going to be important in the future for this particular role. Once I select it, what the AI is able to do is to automatically take the people that are in this particular role and bucket them into who can potentially do the role of the future tomorrow, today, who can do this role if they have upskilling as part of their plan, and effectively who are the people that potentially no longer fit this role as a result of all of the shifts that have been happening in the skills related to this role. So now what we're doing is giving you the tools as a company to effectively decide how to navigate people to the right place in the organization so that they, effectively you are ready for the changes that are coming. In addition to this, what we're now able to do is to effectively use the AI to automatically bucket the people. So this is the first pass, what you're seeing on the screen, which is some people will be retained, some people will be deployed to other parts of the organization, some will be incoming to this role from other teams within the organization. And you can actually tune the AI yourself. So you can decide if you change the thresholds for redeployment, the thresholds for people that are qualified to do this role. And then there are some people, like you saw on the screen, which are being effectively off-boarded from the organization as a result. There'll be some people that will be effectively moved to other teams. There'll be some people that will effectively be incoming employees that need upskilling, as you can see in the case of Elena here, move to the upskilling bucket. And what you're able to do as a result of all of this is to effectively chart the future of the software engineering role of the organization. Not only are you able to do this for a specific role, you can do this for any role at the company. And Eightfold will be there to effectively make sure that you're using AI to automate a lot of these decisions. The really interesting thing about this planning capability is that it marries the financial plan that happens typically once a year with the talent plan that needs to be executed at the company on an everyday basis. And this is really what we are excited about bringing the power of this kind of tool to every one of your members of your HR organization, as well as your line managers, so that they can influence the change within the organization, giving you the ability to weather the kinds of shocks that we have seen broadly in the industry. But the experience doesn't end here. What we're now able to do is also translate this into the experience of the employee. So Elena, who I just mentioned back in the earlier part of the demo, what she is now able to see is when she's been identified as the software engineer of the future, when she navigates to her experience on Eightfold, she has the ability to go in and see that she's been assigned the software engineering development plan of the future. When she navigates to it, she can actually start the plan and see the types of content that the company is suggesting so that she can upskill into building the skills that she lacks, whether that is through mentorship, whether that is through gigs, or whether that is through coursework. all of this is a connected experience that is available to the employee so that they can upskill and become the employee that is now ready to take on this future role at the company. And that's what's exciting about this, is that it allows you to execute this plan and impact the employees that make up the organization in a positive fashion. But we're not stopping here. What we're also doing is giving this power to each and every recruiter that is part of the that has access to Eightfold. So within the talent acquisition experience, recruiters will be able to see qualified employees that can be redeployed to the right positions across the entire company. And this will be available to them. Anybody that was tagged as being able to be redeployed to other parts of the organization will show up within our talent acquisition module, and the recruiter will be able to take the right actions into moving them to the right parts in the company. So just to summarize, right, what I have shown you, our skills-based talent planning capabilities help you understand your market in a fashion that's not been possible before, layer on top of it the types of trends that we're seeing in the market. It helps you understand the evolution of every role, taking into account things like generative AI that is going to touch every single role across the company. It helps you plan for the future of the organization using the planning tools, so moving that out of Excel and moving that out of Google Sheets and bringing it into a solution that is AI-powered. And finally, it allows you to execute that plan through talent management, through talent acquisition, as well as very soon through our Talent Flex solution, allowing you to solve every problem in the most efficient way possible, when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to internal mobility, or it comes to hiring contractors from the outside. So that's what's really, really exciting about this. And obviously, we're very, very excited to bring this in the hands of every one of you in the audience as you consider this solution. But again, I said a bit earlier that we are also going to be talking about AI and generative AI quite a bit. So I do have one more thing to share. I mean, throughout the day today, you will hear about how generative AI is going to transform the role of every single one of your employees. But this also impacts all of the roles that we at Eightfold serve, right? Whether it comes to your candidates, your employees, and your recruiters. And so what I have next to show you is an example of the Copilot product that we have recently launched when it comes to improving the experience on Eightfold. So let me show you a quick demo of what the future of the recruiter experience actually looks like on Eightfold using Talent Intelligence Copilot. What we are looking at on the screen at the moment is our talent acquisition module. Again, you don't see Copilot yet, but this is the experience that a recruiter sees when they log into Eightfold. And in this case, the recruiter is going to navigate to the product manager position that you see on the page, of a position that I happen to know quite a bit about as a hiring manager. When they click on this, they now have the ability to call up the Talent Intelligence Copilot. This is a Copilot that interacts directly with the user. It can take conversational input that can change the UI on the screen. In this case, it can actually filter down to the types of candidates that I want to talk to. For example, candidates located in Palo Alto. But what I can also do is, without navigating out of the screen, I can ask the Copilot to summarize the top 3 candidates that I see on the page. So no more navigating back and forth. It is about interacting with the Copilot in a way where it can assist you in making decisions. In this case, when it goes to Juanita as the candidate, I can now ask it to effectively compose an email that is engaging and one that is sort of driven towards getting a response out of Juanita. And I can send this in a single click. So something that would take me minutes to compose in the past is now down to a few seconds. I can also send this for feedback to the hiring manager, as you're seeing the app do on the screen. And effectively, the hiring manager also has a version of the Copilot that they can interact with to summarize the background of the candidate. Once I send out the feedback, the recruiter experience is complete here. But in addition to this, what we're also giving the recruiter the ability to do is to take a lot of the manual tasks and use automation for them. So an example here is to actually write job descriptions for the recruiter. And they can do this in a fashion that is compliant, that takes into account the diversity goals of the organization. So instead of spending what would be at least 15 to 30 minutes on writing a job description, they can now do this in just a few seconds. So similar to the example that I showed you for writing code, which obviously is now possible using some of the tools that are available in the market, A lot of the tasks that a recruiter has to do today that are manual can be completely automated using our Copilot product. And this is just the first iteration of what is available on our platform. We also have a version of this that can build a lot of automation for candidates as well. It can generate resumes, it can generate cover letters, it can effectively surface the right skills to the candidate, and completely transform the experience that they see when they use Eightfold's Talent Intelligence Copilot. So with that, what I would like to say to you is that some of this is not science fiction. It is here today. We're excited to bring this to market, and we're very, very excited, obviously, for many of your companies to adopt this. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for attending this session, and I hope you have a great rest of your Cultivate experience. Thank you.